Hey, coming up on your favorite podcast, Zach, Ryan, and I, we are back in studio once again. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's me in the studio. It's those guys at their respective houses. We're socially distancing over this Thanksgiving weekend as the COVID cases surge. But we're here. We're on a Tuesday night. We're breaking down all of what happened in Week 11. We're going to play a new game called Something or Nothing and a brand new game of Take Your Pick, fresh power rankings, and we send one more team packing. It's getting harder to do, I must say. All that and a lot more coming up next on the pod. Hey, it's the Tim Anderson Podcast. I'm Tim. That's Ryan. And that's Zach. All sitting at home waiting for Thanksgiving that will be attended by nobody. How excited are you, gentlemen? Welcome.
I'm excited for the long weekend.
Yeah, I was gonna say, look, this weekend is something that I need. I need a break. It has been a grind the last couple of months, so it's gonna be nice to get about 5 days off for me. So,
will you make your own turkey?
Yes, we are making the turkey.
we're not. I'm not certain I'm making a full turkey because it's just Lauren and I. I'm thinking about getting some turkey breast if I can find some. If not, we might do like Cornish game hens.
I'm having my old man bring me some turkey because he makes turkey well. I'll say this story, that he, I think it was a hospital visit. I think it was either my mother or maybe it was me or it was somebody. As the legend goes, my dad's in the waiting room. There's nothing on TV except Martha Stewart, and Martha Stewart is prepping Thanksgiving turkey. And my old man literally just jots down what Martha's doing. And I'll tell you what, since then, he's been a turkey machine. He can carve it. He's got it figured out. So we're getting some turkey on Thanksgiving because it was either going to be that or I was going to see what the budding turkey aisle had at the Walmart at the Super Wall or something like that. We were going to pull that off. But wife and I can't cook. We just can't do it. It's just not going to happen. So anyway, it's going to be fun, although it is not festive, obviously. But there is still some things that feel like Thanksgiving. You get the day off. You get football. And that's not so bad.
Look, I think the football might be what I'm most excited for.
You might not have a Thursday night game though now.
Well, the way I hear it, the way it sounds like they're going to play that thing come hell or high water. I mean, that's the way they're making that sound. What they did to the 49ers 2 weeks ago. I think they're going to do that to the Ravens. I feel like they're going to be like, I don't care if you got to go out there with 40 guys, you're going out there. Period.
Yeah, I've just heard that if they come back tomorrow again with more positives, then it's really in jeopardy.
Yeah, it's really hard to pull it off. I think they're up to 10. 10 total or whatever between staff and players. And I just think that you start to go deeper than that as you're finding out at the college level, the Gophers-Badger game is canceled. You start to get into that number where you're going to lose. Yeah, it is. It's out.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, it's off. It's off. I think Gophers have 10 players and 5 coaches out right now or something like that with COVID or some kind of ratio like that. And I think once you get to that place, there is a point of no return for even the best of teams and the best of protocols. And the Ravens are finding that out right now.
All I'm going to say is Wisconsin must have seen what the Gophers did to Purdue last weekend and really started quaking in their boots.
Yeah, it wasn't Wisconsin that called it off.
Well, here's all I know is, is it Jeff Brom or who's the coach? Is it Brom?
I think it's still Brom.
Can Brom be the coach of the Badgers? Because I like our chances against him. PJ owns Brom. I'll tell you what, that guy he can't beat us. He can't do it anyway. So here we are, guys. We're back again. Another great episode of the podcast coming your way. Lots of things coming up in the episode. Ryan, let me start with you.
Sure.
What do you? I guess as we head into this Thanksgiving week. We're this is always to me we got 2-3 weeks left in the fantasy football season. We sort of know the great teams, the elite teams at this point, but what do you think? Give me your observations after last week as we kind of start to hit the home stretch here.
I mean, the thing this year has kind of been that that the gap between elite and pits is not really, unless it's the Jets, is really not really as wide as we think it is. mean, you have all these teams that will either, play the really good teams close, play the elite teams close, and then they'll lose to a team that we thought was complete garbage. You had, Carolina went on that couple game run where they looked like they might be turning it around, and then they're in the pits again. Minnesota looks like they might be turning it around. They beat a really good team in Green Bay, and then they're in the pits again with a bad game against Dallas that they should have won. You look at a team like the Chargers, who, for all the talent that they have, are losing games constantly. So it's really difficult to look around and pick some elite teams that aren't just Pittsburgh and Kansas City. And I think that you have those two teams and then the rest of the league at this point for me.
And Zach, I know you were kind of complaining back and forth with me a little bit. We were texting that I feel like you have hit this place where, the coaching and the offensive execution is starting to really drive you insane at this stage in the season.
Well, I think that there's so many people, and it includes some of these NFL coaches that don't understand like the purpose of an offense, right? And you say, well, what's the purpose of an offense? And everybody says to score, but there's so much more than that. Mm-hmm. And the way that teams are executing and doing things right now, it's just baffling to me. And I really do think that like coaches need like a quality control, a game theory guy on the sideline with them. And we can talk a little more about it as we get into some of these games and some of the stuff we've got set up for tonight. But it was a frustrating week watching some of this stuff.
Yeah, you were on the text chain. I felt like there were 3 or 4 different occasions where you were just like, what are they doing? I felt like that was what was he doing in that? Like, what is the reason for that? I know you got after McVay a little last night, but you got after Brady and Arians. But I mean, before that, you were, you were all over a lot of different calls.
The Colts did everything you could possibly do to try to let Green Bay win that game. I mean, throwing the ball, they had like 9 holding penalties in the game. They had, but 5 of them came on like the final 8 plays of offense. It was really baffling to me what they were trying to accomplish on some of the stuff, and it's hard to watch sometimes, Tim.
Yeah, I defer to you oftentimes because I know you come from that kind of football coaching acumen. Same to you, Ryan. I sort of defer to you guys on some of that stuff, but there are times where, again, I just look at when do you commit penalties? What is your late game strategy? Is it consistent? Do your guys make the right plays at the right time? And that's always, to me, how I sort of look at coaching, and that's where I like, obviously, you defer to guys like Belichick, who are, great, but then you look at Arians, and you're just like, there's a clear difference, like, between the way he coaches the game and the way, like, guys like Belichick and guys like Tomlin and Harbaugh coach the game. It's just, and Vrabel, I think, to a certain extent, and you're just like, man, it's loose. It's not airtight. It doesn't feel precise and exact. Ryan?
Well, I think what you see in a lot of these players, and obviously it's different for everybody, but I think in a large swath of these cases, you see guys that are used to having very structured, regimented lives that have kind of been uprooted by this year. Guys that kind of thrive in a situation where they're told, this is where you'll be, this is what you'll do, this is what you'll eat, this is what you're going to work out today. And they've had that their whole life. And suddenly this year you don't have that. And you see, a certain drop off in play. And you're seeing it in places that you don't normally see it, right? Tom Brady didn't look good last night.
No, he looked terrible.
You wonder if maybe that's age, or if maybe it's something like his routine's been thrown off by the chaos of this year. You look at somebody like Lamar Jackson, who's a really talented player, but he's in a regimented system in Baltimore, and you wonder if the lack of structure around the team with the COVID issues has affected his rhythm. And it's such a rhythm-based league, and you have all these players and offenses that are based on rhythm and based on timing. And when all the timing's thrown off, when the feeling of timing is thrown off, you can't get in that mode where everything's clicking. It kind of feels like sometimes the discipline is the next thing to go, where the discipline is a function of that of that rhythm, of that timing, and guys are not in sync with each other, and it's hard to get in sync with each other when you're in and out of the facility because of COVID cases. You're in and out of the facility because things have to shut down because you came in contact with somebody, or you're home for 2 weeks if you're the case of Andy Dalton. Those things can throw off the timing. But then you have guys who just play loose. Right, you have guys that are, the rookies in the league that are doing really well this year are guys that are coming in with zero expectations, who have no background in the league, and they're thriving. And you think about who are the guys that have had to regiment their lives in a football season, and who are the guys who are coming in this fresh. And there's a clear dichotomy between the two. So you wonder if maybe it's not just the coaching errors or the coaching problems. Tampa Bay is a really talented team, but you start to wonder if maybe the timing is a little bit off for guys like that.
Interesting. Obviously, it's something we can totally revisit, but it is something that strikes me, and I think you're right, Ryan. I do think that there's so much going on in the league this year that it's just even the teams that are so used to being structured have a hard time maintaining it, and it becomes a real issue. No question about that.
Well, and you saw it in New England too when we talked about Cam Newton last week.
Yeah.
Right. We talked about Cam Newton having this. He was lighting it up in New England when they were able to go all cylinders. The timing was good under Belichick's system, but he gets COVID for a week or for 2 weeks, and he comes back and he's not the same quarterback. And that to me is just supporting evidence for this idea that the timing is just thrown off for so many of these guys.
Right.
I think that part of it too was their game plan with him wasn't sustainable.
Yeah.
They ran into some stuff, and they ran him into the ground a little bit. And, right, the theory if you're going to play him is, right, make him beat you with his arm. And he's been able to do it once or twice, but he's also shown he's still prone to those mistakes, which we've seen in the past.
And that's been the playbook on Cam Newton for like 5 years.
Well, and it just seems like, too, that Cam, I'm not going to make excuses for Cam because, he's definitely had some good games, had some bad games. But you just feel like, is he ever going to be surrounded with players at wide receiver who can make a difference? You just look at his wide receiving core the last few years in Carolina and certainly what he has in New England, and it's not requisite of winning football consistently, right? Edelman's a shell. He's gone. He's injured. N'Keal Harry hasn't developed. I don't know. I like Damian Harris, but yeah, they don't have that go-to guy, Zach.
I don't think he will be because I don't know how much longer he's going to be a starting quarterback in the league.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because, they got to make a decision on him at the end of the year in New England, and, they're in this weird spot, right? And some teams are in this spot, right? Not just New England. There are a lot of teams that are sort of in this do we go for it or not kind of situation. New England's 4-6. The Vikings are 4-6. There's a lot of teams in that 3 to 4 win area where they're like, do we need to go and draft a quarterback? And at what point do we need to not be a 8-win team? I'm not saying that they're going to throw games here, but these teams are in like a weird crossroads spot right now, like teams like New England, Minnesota, and the like.
I think New England has hit the point where they should turn to Stidham for the remainder of the schedule and find out what exactly they have there and then make their decision from there, because I don't think they're going to go back with Cam.
And this may be a time machine kind of conversation for us at some point in the future, but I feel like this year's completely different for Cam if Chicago signs him instead of Foles. As Chicago has more weapons, Chicago is a more creative offense. Chicago has a better offensive line.
Are we sure about that?
I think that they have a much better offensive line when they're healthy than New England does.
A more creative offense? I don't see that. Do you?
You don't think that Chicago that Matt Nagy would have more tools in his tool chest than that with the weapons around Cam, with that kind of quarterback as opposed to Nick Foles or Mitch Trubisky?
Maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say.
He'd be more creative, but I'd still take Josh McDaniel over Nagy.
Yeah, wouldn't you take Belichick McDaniels over Nagy and John Lazor or Bill Lazor?
Belichick McDaniels with this skill core around their quarterback, or Bill Lazor and Matt Nagy with that skill core around their quarterback?
Well,
I don't think we're I'm not arguing that the Bears would have a better record if you flip the quarterbacks.
I agree with you.
I 100% agree with that. But what happens if you flip the coaches? What if everything stays the same on Chicago and New Orleans or in New England, but you flip the coaching staffs?
I think if you flip the coaching staffs, the Patriots haven't won a game, but the Bears are probably close to or tied for the lead to the division.
I think that's the right assessment. Yep. I think that's the right answer for sure. All right, guys, we're going to get into a new game here in just a moment, but first, favorite. Do you have a Thanksgiving football memory that sticks out? Do you have one that like is it whether a game that we watched or something like that did a fight break out in your house during a game? Something like that. Do you have a Thanksgiving football memory? Zach, what do you have?
Well, my Thanksgiving football memory, I was up at Craigan's with my cousin and his mom and dad, so my aunt and uncle, and my family was not, my immediate family was not there. I was just there with my cousin and his mom and dad, and that was for the Leon Lett game in the snow, where they blocked the field goal in Dallas, and
I remember that game.
Boots it around, and then Miami kicks another one and wins it.
It's just an incredible game. I just remember, poor Leon Lett. This was the year after the Super Bowl too. Like he had that thing in the end zone. Don Beebe chased him from behind, took the ball away from him, and it just like poor Leon Lett was a really good player, but unfortunately he's known for 2 gaffes, and it's too bad. I remember that game very well. Ryan,
look, I'm not. I watch Thanksgiving football, but I haven't had that many memorable moments in my life. The most memorable game I can think of on Thanksgiving anyway, for me was the Randy Moss game, and I was 5 years old.
Yeah, 2000, right? I think that was the 2000 game with Dante. Was it? Oh, I mean, but he had another one in 2000, I thought, where he was just incredible, right? If I remember right, 2000, 2001. I want to say like him and Dante had a game.
You might be right about that, but I'm thinking about the 98 game against the Cowboys. That's not even one that I remember watching. It's just one that I've seen the highlights of. But I really don't have a whole lot of Thanksgiving memories for football. I remember the Vikings losing to the Lions a couple years in a row on Thanksgiving, and that was embarrassing. But such is life as a Vikings fan. Embarrassment at the most inopportune times.
Yeah, Ryan speaks of a 46-36 game, November 26th, 1998.
Some new Big 12 defenses there.
Two 50-yard touchdowns from Cunningham to Moss. Actually, 3. I take that back. He had 3 for 51, 56, and 56. Let's not forget about Leroy Horde's 50-yard rush for a touchdown, though. Let's not. Poor Leroy Horde never gets the credit.
Did you have one, Tim? I do have another one I remember. For some reason the 98 game was there, but I remember like a 2000 game. I feel like when it was Dante, I think it might have been Dante. They played the Cowboys again in 2000. The Vikings did and beat them 27-15.
And I guess that game sticks out to me more. I don't know why. It just for whatever reason It does. I remember because we were a pretty good team. We were 10-2 when we won that game. I think we were making a push towards the NFC title game that year. I think that's 41 Donut year, if I'm not mistaken. Moss was Moss. He caught 2 touchdown passes that game. Robert Smith had a big game. Those things just kind of stick out. A young Dante was playing, and I was so in on Dante. I think that's part of it. Is like I really wanted him to be. I wanted him to be good. Like, I really wanted him to be good. Robert Smith had 21 carries for 148 that game. Not bad. Moss had 7 for 144 and 2. So I think those things stick out to me. But I think it was just because I was a Culpepper guy, and I really thought we had our franchise guy, and I was super in to kind of get behind him. And I don't know. So that one always kind of sticks out to me. I remember Tom in a couple of throwback Patriot uniform games where they'd roll Pat the Patriot out and just roll up the Lions. I was very big on some of those. So yeah, that's good.
one of those games. I remember one of those games where the Patriots ultimately won, but Calvin Johnson just went off and had an amazing game. And I remember watching that and thinking, this guy's going to be in the Hall of Fame. I think that might have been like 2008, like the year after, like that year that Tom Brady hurt his knee. I feel like it was that year.
You might be right.
I might be wrong on that, but there was one of those games that I just watched Calvin Johnson go off, and that was a fun game to watch.
I recall. I mean, so on Thanksgiving night, you had the butt fumble.
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't know that was Thanksgiving.
That's right.
Yep,
that's
that was Thanksgiving night in 2012. Patriots 49, Jets 19.
Oh, Mark Sanchez.
As a Packer fan, they retired Favre's number and then lost to the Bears. I remember that one in 2015. And then there is the one other night that stands out to me. I believe I'm trying to remember. I think it was the night of the butt fumble. Actually, now that I'm going back to this here and looking at it, in 2012, we went over to my cousin's aunt and uncle's for a after Thanksgiving kind of party, and played games with family. And then they were all in college, so all their college friends came over, and the night kept going on. And that is the only time in my life that I've been at my aunt and uncle's house where there was not a drop of alcohol left in the house. We drank that place dry, which is astounding to me still to this day.
Yeah, I mean it's not a dry house at the Nee Neighbor house. It's not dry over there.
But I'm pretty sure it was the butt fumble night. Now that I'm looking at it.
Well, those poor Jets. And that's the beginning of the end. They haven't been right ever since. I mean, they really haven't. I mean, that butt fumble has set them back 8 years for sure. No question about it. Really bad. You bring up a good point on the Hall of Fame. I'll get to that a little bit later on. But first, let's play a little game called Something or Nothing. This is a game I've played in the past with folks. Ryan and I have had these conversations many times. Is this something or is it nothing? I'm going to throw some scenarios out at you from what we saw over the last week, and my two experts in the room will tell us if it's something or nothing. Starting here, the late buzz last week, the thing that came up, and Zach tried to take advantage of it in fantasy football, Taysom Hill got the starting job over Jameis Winston. Does this say something? Is this something about Jameis Winston or nothing?
This is 100% something, I think. If there was any thought that Jameis might be the quarterback in New Orleans next year or in the future, that is out the window now. There is no way that they would have gone the Taysom Hill route if they thought that Jameis might be the guy. And maybe they still really do think that Taysom Hill might be the guy, but it's clear that Jameis is not at this point.
Yeah, I would say it's something as well. I mean, we heard on Sunday morning that the plan from Sean Payton was that if Breeze had to go out in the middle of a game, it was always going to be Winston. But if they had time to prepare and Breeze was out, it was going to be Hill. And that to me says that he has way more confidence in Taysom Hill than he does in Jameis Winston. And to be honest, I don't think it's completely unfounded. I think Taysom Hill played a pretty good game on Sunday. I think he looked all right. I mean, he's not Drew Brees. It's going to be really hard to replace Drew Brees anyway, even at the level that he's currently at, which is not the Drew Brees of a few years ago. But he adds another wrinkle to the game that Jameis really doesn't. And a guy like that takes some risks, but he's not going to take the kind of risks that Jameis takes, where he really forces a lot of balls and he makes a lot of mistakes. And when you're on your backup quarterback and you don't want your defense to be on the field too often, it makes more sense to put a guy in there who knows his job might be more on the line than somebody who's just willing to go up there and gun it no matter what.
And I think that it proved itself out. Like, Hill played effectively. He didn't throw any touchdowns, but he ran 2 in at the goal line, which is an added asset to him. I mean, I feel like he looked the part.
He did. I was really surprised. When they were down 9-3, I was a little concerned, like, oh boy, when do we see Jameis Winston? But yeah, he seemed like he steadied himself, and I thought in the second half he was pretty good. Like, he made some big throws and yet kept some plays alive and did Taysom Hill stuff. I was impressed. I will say, and I haven't been a big Taysom Hill fan, but it was effective. It worked. I'm concerned about Jameis Winston. I don't know what that says when a coach like Sean Payton says, I'll take the 30-year-old who's thrown 7 passes in the league over you. Like, I feel like that says something, doesn't it, Ryan?
Yeah, is Taysom Hill really 30?
Yeah, he's 30.
First of all, I had no idea. Yeah, I mean, that's
Mormon,
that's just
BYU.
a bad sign. That's just a bad sign.
I think like it should be noted too that like this looked like a typical Saints game. Like, Michael Thomas had 9 catches for 104 yards. They spread the ball around. So it wasn't like they won in a gimmicky fashion.
No,
Right.
it's true.
And I mean,
You mean it wasn't like that Ben DiNucci game for the Cowboys where they had Ezekiel Elliott run out of the shotgun for
right.
5-6 straight snaps?
And so, I mean, and this is, Tim, you mentioned I added him in fantasy, and I added him before they were going to start. Like, I was just hoping that he might, come in at the goal line and run one in. But now I sit here this week and I'm literally like debating with myself, like, do I start Taysom Hill at quarterback against Denver this week, or do I play Lamar Jackson with no running backs behind him on a short week? Like, which is baffling to me that I'm even having that conversation with myself.
It's interesting to watch, and I'm going to continue to watch this Taysom Hill thing because now it is sort of as he goes. I think the Saints' future goes. Like he's going to be the guy that's going to ride them into the playoffs if they're going to go. He's going to have to play well over the next 3-4 weeks, and the schedule's good for him, and there's no doubt about that. It's a good schedule for the Saints, but you still got to play well, and there's landmines all over this league, as we found out. All right, next one. Oh, did you have one more thing? Sorry.
No, I'm good.
Okay, here we go. Next one. The Packers' defensive woes. Is it something, or is it nothing? Ryan, why don't you start?
I mean, I'll go first on this one because Zach's the owner, but I do think it's something. I think it's bared itself out over a number of weeks. And I think that anything that goes more than 3 weeks in the NFL is something that you have to start paying attention to if it's consistent like that. And the fact of the matter is that the woes for the Packers aren't necessarily all around defense. It's their running defense. They just get gashed. And I said this a few weeks ago that they really missed that heavy presence in the middle. They're really missing that anchor that can hold their defense together in the middle and prevent the runs from moving to the second level and keep those offensive linemen at the line of scrimmage rather than climbing to the linebackers to the third level. And they just don't have it. And that's something that in the NFL, in a division that you're in that runs the ball pretty effectively, with the exception of the Bears, the run defense is something you have to have, not just in divisional games either. I mean, we've seen them get run over like the last 3 weeks. And the Colts are a good running team, but they're missing 3 of their offensive linemen this year. And that team is kind of patchwork up front, and they're playing by committee with a hot hand approach. And you still get gashed. And that's a game that you need to use to get right with your run defense, and they just couldn't do it. They don't have the speed at linebacker. This was one of the things, the knocks on Kamal Martin coming out, as good as he's looked this year, was that he's heavy-footed, and he doesn't read the play well, and he can't always get to the spot where he needs to be. You have all these guys in the front four. I don't remember if they're running a 3-4 or 4-3 anymore, but either way, they're not holding their line. They're getting blown off the ball almost every play. So that's unsustainable. You can't build a good defense without a good front seven because you have to be able to compete against the run. Now, you don't have to stop every run, but you've got to be able to compete against the run, and they can't compete right now.
Zach?
So here's a couple of things. I don't think they're a great tackling team. And that shows. Like, I don't know how many times I'm sitting here watching the game, and I'm like, tackle. They don't tackle well. They have some things schematically that I don't always agree with. They're, 3rd and 4, and they're playing this really soft zone coverage and just giving up first downs. A couple times now in the past few weeks, we've had Preston Smith running down the field trying to cover someone. Those are not good things. But when I looked at the game this week, all right, I want to read through a couple of the possessions here. And then a couple of tweets that I saw in the timeline here. Okay, so first possession, they create a turnover off of a turnover, right? Like offense turned the ball over, defense comes out and gets a turnover. Touchdown drive, punt. The offense turns it over again, and they force a missed field goal. Interception, touchdown, right? So far they've got 2 turnovers. They've forced a punt, a missed field goal, and someone tweets, the Packers defense is ass, right? And I'm like, what more do you want them to do at this point, right? Like, they've been put in some bad spots, right? It's 21-14, okay? And then the offense comes out on the field, and this too, Tim, kind of goes back to our early thing, like, what is the point of offense? And sometimes your offense's job is to protect your defense. And so the offense comes out, and it's 3rd and 1 with like a minute 30 to go, and they run the whole play clock down and snap the ball with 50 seconds left. And people are freaking out. Like, they're wasting time. What are they doing? Well, what they're doing is protecting their defense. They're making sure their defense doesn't have to come back on the field. And they still go down and score a touchdown, right? All right, so now we're at halftime. The second half possessions were field goal, touchdown, field goal off a turnover, and a punt. And then in overtime, they give up the field goal off the turnover. Like, that's not a defensive issue, right? The defense played as well as you probably could play when your offense turns the ball over 4 times and puts you in shitty spots over and over. So is the defense good? It's not a top 10 defense. I get that. But I think sometimes the defensive problems are overblown. And I don't know if this is the week necessarily to put it on them.
Yeah, so you're going to go nothing on this one, right? So if you had to pick the two, is it something or is it nothing?
I'm going to say nothing. Here's the deal, right? Like, the Packers have shown that their offense is good enough to play with anyone. And we saw it this week, right? The Colts were a number 1 scoring defense. They put up 31 points on them. They're a Super Bowl contender. They're also a contender to go out in the first round because we've seen that the offense can melt down a little bit and put the defense in bad spots.
Yeah, I think it's nothing too, just because I look at the whole team in general as having there is a team softness that needs to be addressed, not a defensive softness strictly, because there's offensive softness too at times. And as much as Rodgers has been great, and when Rodgers has played well and they've won, Rodgers has been MVP caliber. He's been fantastic. But, Valdez-Scantling's been hurt a lot. Lazard's been hurt a lot. Jones has been hurt a lot. There's been a lack of continuity offensively, and I feel like Rodgers has been the thing that's kind of pieced it together. But it's sort of like what we said with Russell Wilson a few weeks ago. If Rodgers isn't great, they're in trouble. Like, they have a tough time making that happen. And so I think there's a team softness issue there. Defensively, I agree with Ryan. They're not fantastic, and I agree with you. They're not fantastic. But I don't know if they're I don't know if they lose in the playoffs because of their defense, as the way I see it. It's possible. I just don't know if that's true. All right.
I think the way the team's built, they're not asking the defense to give up 14. Right?
Yeah,
the team is built to score 35 and defense hold them under that.
All right, here we go. Next one. Tom Brady struggles this season, especially throwing the deep ball. Is it something or is it nothing? Ryan, go ahead.
I think this one's tough because I feel like every time you ask me to count Tom Brady out, he comes out and does something amazing. So I'm a little hesitant to say that it's something, but I'm going to say it's something because when you look at these quarterbacks and the aging process, the deep ball accuracy is kind of the first thing to go, especially for these guys that aren't normally mobile quarterbacks, that you have that extra indicator that the mobility is starting to go a little bit. You kind of get in that with Cam Newton a little bit where he looks a little beat up and the rest of his game gets exposed. But Brady's been a really good deep ball quarterback his entire career. And it kind of becomes, for guys that are really good at throwing the deep ball, it kind of becomes the canary in the coal mine a little bit as to whether or not you can actually throw the deep ball accurately. And he's getting the ball there. He's got the distance. The problem is he doesn't have the timing or the accuracy. And this is where I kind of waffle a little bit, is because accuracy is kind of a two-part problem, right? Accuracy is both on the quarterback and on the receiver, and the timing between the two. So if the issue with Tom Brady is actually his accuracy, we're going to see that over a number of weeks where he continues to miss deep balls on wide open guys that he should be hitting. but it's also because that his guys aren't on the same page as him. They're not turning for the ball soon enough. They're not jumping for the ball soon enough. So it's I think it's a compound issue on the deep ball. So I'm going to say it's a mix of something and nothing. And I need a little bit more time to see whether or not it's something or nothing on the deep ball.
I think it's something. I just in watching that game last night, he comes out at the end of the game needing a field goal, and I'm not confident in it, right?
Yep.
And the Tom of old you would have been confident in, and it's not an issue of weapons. He's got a ton of weapons around him.
Yep.
I know, Tim, we've talked about we don't necessarily agree with the style of play they're going with.
Yeah.
Some of that's on the coaching. But I started thinking about it a little bit, and it's like, how many guys would you right now rather have than Tom in that situation last night? And there's a lot. I'll go down the list. You stop me when you want to take Tom over someone. Mahomes, a healthy Drew Brees, Wilson, Rodgers, Roethlisberger.
Yeah, I'll take. Yeah, I'd still probably take Roethlisberger at this point. At this point, yes, but that's a closer one. But yeah,
here's where it gets fun now. Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I like Kyler Murray a lot.
Josh Allen. Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson. I'm not sure you got me on Deshaun Watson yet. I'm not sure. I don't know if I get. Carr's been really good this year. I will not say that Carr's been bad. Carr's been really good.
Goff. He outfueled him last night when he needed it.
You're right. Would you? I mean, I couldn't.
There were a couple throws that Goff made that made me shake my head, and there were a couple of throws that I went, that was amazing.
I can't. Jared Goff, I can't take. No. I draw the line at Jared Goff. I'm going to take Tom over Jared Goff 100 times out of 100, period.
Okay, here's a couple other guys I had on the list that we haven't mentioned yet. Lamar Jackson, who hasn't necessarily...
I'm not ready to go that far.
He has his own late game issues, right?
Yep.
Justin Herbert.
I'd take Herbert.
I don't know if I can take Herbert. No, I can't take Herbert. They can't close the deal now. They got 17-point leads in fourth quarters. They can't hold it.
Okay, but here's the problem, Tim. Right? And this should tell you why it is something. We are debating whether or not you would rather have Tom Brady or a rookie quarterback who has won one NFL game.
You're right. No, here's the thing. I think it is. I mean, it's certainly something, but I don't think it's necessarily Brady 100%. I really think Arians and Byron Leftwich are doing Tom a disservice. I don't think they are playing to Tom's strengths. I mean, if you look at what Josh McDaniels did in New England the last handful of years, they didn't throw a lot of deep balls, Ryan. I know, I think they made their money throwing, getting the ball out of his hands quickly, not letting him sit in the pocket. It was a lot of quick hitters, a lot of 5-yard hits, a lot of quick slants, a lot of stuff like that. They didn't want Tom sitting in the pocket for 5 seconds trying to find guys. I don't see any of that. I mean, they're constantly looking to throw 15, 20 yards down the field, and that means Tom's got to sit in the pocket, and Tom's got to sit there for 5, 6 seconds. That's not his game. Not at 43. You got to make some adjustments. And I agree, there is an obsession, and almost an unhealthy obsession that Tom has right now with Antonio Brown. And I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but it's just like, oh, Antonio Brown's here. I need to throw him the ball every third pass to make this work. And it's obvious. There's just no balance in the offense. Like last night, I said this to you, Zach, that if you have to ask Tom, most quarterbacks in the league, but specifically guys like Tom at 43, if you're asking him to throw it 50 times, you're not going to win. Period. You're just not going to win the game. So I don't know if this is all on Tom.
I also, before we move on, just want to say Kirk Cousins, Joe Burrow, Taysom Hill.
No. And poor Joe Burrow.
So,
poor Joe Burrow.
The one thing that I have to say, just in defense of my own take here, I wasn't saying they threw it a lot in New England, threw it deep a lot, but he was consistently rated as one of the most efficient deep throwers in the league.
You're right.
He completed his downfield passes.
Yeah, because they would use it as a gadget. Like they would use it every 10 plays. They'd set it up by going short, and then stretching you over the top. Don't you think? I mean, even when they had Randy Moss, they hit Welker a million times. They hit, all these other guys, and then they'd throw it over the top.
Do you think that that's the problem in Tampa right now?
I think they've got a whole bunch of guys that want to go down the field and catch 50-yard touchdown passes, and I just don't think that's Tom's game. Tom. That's just not who he is. Like Tom needs to get some. He's one of the best quarterbacks in history at taking care of the ball, not throwing interceptions. He threw 9 last year in total to nobody. He's already got 9 this year with a stack of wide receivers. I think it's just because the offensive coaching and the play calling isn't always putting Tom in a position to be successful. They at no point were they chasing 14 to 20 points last night. Normally when you see a stat line of a quarterback throwing 48 to 50 times, it's because they're trailing. Like they're down 2-3 scores and you got to throw it. That wasn't the case last night. They just abandoned the running game and just said Tom's going to throw it every down. And that's a bad recipe. That's just not smart. And everybody loves Bruce Arians, and the more I'm watching, and I mean I'm watching more Tampa Bay than I ever have, I don't see it. Like I don't see it in Bruce Arians. I think he's loose. I think his teams commit a shitload of penalties. I don't think they're very well disciplined. I don't get it. I don't see it.
So who won the breakup?
I think it's an equal separation right now. I feel like Tom won the breakup, but I feel like they split the assets 50-50.
I think Tom got the hotter girl, but she's crazy as hell.
Well, I think that, like in any good breakup, like there's mud on both of them.
Like
right.
I think New England's the one that's kicking the tires on a couple right now, but they're still kind of they're not really committed. Tom's the one that got into a rebound relationship with the absolute 10 at the bar, who turned out to be a 10 out of 10 on the crazy scale, who's like key your car in the morning crazy.
Yeah,
like that's where they're at because it's just volatile right now. In Tampa.
You feel like like Belichick in New England, they're just sort of like going on small coffee dates right now. Maybe they've made a profile online somewhere. They're keeping it simple. They're keeping it real simple. Yeah, they're trying to just really getting to know themselves right now. I think that's really they're doing some Tai Chi. They're just chilling out a little bit.
They met this nice guy, Cam, but we're not really sure about him yet. We're kind of flirting with this Jarrett Stidham guy,
sure.
too.
Yeah, we're just kind of talking to people, having some coffee. We're just checking, seeing what's up.
Really just finding myself right now in 2020.
That's exactly it. All right. We got a couple others to get to, but I'm going to have one more, and then I want to throw some Hall of Fame stuff at you guys real quick since we're in that mode today, and some news broke on that. Last one, Lamar Jackson struggles. Is that something or nothing?
Honestly, I when we talked about this question, I think he's throwing the ball better than he did last year, which sounds weird. The problem is there's nothing around him. They don't have a big time running back. I'm disappointed in what they've gotten out of Dobbins. I thought that was going to be like a big boost to the offense. It hasn't been.
And Hollywood Brown's not as good as we thought, I think. Right? I mean, don't you think? He may not be that good.
Yeah. He disappears too often. Right? I don't think he had a catch this week.
I think the bigger problems for them with the running game are their lack of commitment to one guy. And I think you're seeing this around the league more and more. This kind of hot hand approach really does nothing to help your running game. Unless you're Kansas City with just an electric quarterback who can throw the ball all over the yard that you have to respect 100% of the time, it's really difficult to not have a running game. And there's just no rhythm for any of these guys. There's no reps for any of these guys. You're giving one guy 8 carries. You're giving another guy 10 carries. You're giving another guy 7 carries. That's not a winning system. It just doesn't work in a league where guys need to find their rhythm. So I think it's part of the issue, and I was saying this to a friend of mine, that part of the issue is you look at Lamar Jackson play on these throws that he's making that he shouldn't be making. He's got happy feet. He's trying to find a running lane, and then he just decides to throw. He's trying to do it all himself. And there's like Zach said, there's no one around him. And I'm a guy who thought that J.K. Dobbins was a perfect fit for this offense. Because if you look at his success rate at Ohio State, his best plays came on plays where he was next to somebody who could run as well, who was also a running threat. When defenses have to respect both the quarterback as a runner and the running back as a runner, J.K. Dobbins was the best running back in college football last year. He doesn't have a ton of miles on him. He doesn't have a ton of carries in him. He's a guy that can come in fresh. I don't know what their obsession is with Gus Edwards and Mark Ingram. Let J.K. Dobbins get into the offense. He's a good, fresh, young running back who's really talented, and he's had a couple of pretty good flashes, but he's had no chances to get on the field and in rhythm. So Lamar Jackson feels like, well, I got to take care of this myself. My team's doing me no favors. I've got no receivers that can catch the ball outside of Mark Andrews. Who's their offensive coordinator? That guy should be fired for the way he's utilized some of these guys.
That's Greg Roman. Greg Roman, who tends to run a lot of very vanilla offenses. At least he has in his past. But I don't know. It's not working there. I'm a little concerned about Lamar. I'm a little concerned. I don't know if it's something yet, but I'm a little concerned. I feel like Hollywood. I mean, some of this is on Hollywood Brown. He's not as good as we think. Mark Andrews is pretty good at tight end. I mean, they've brought Des Bryant, who hadn't played in 4 years, and he's out there making plays for them. I'm a little bit. I'm concerned. Go ahead, Zach.
Des might be their best wide receiver right now.
Yeah, he might be. There's a real possibility, and that is a scary thought.
I think that at tight end, Andrews is their best weapon, but you're limited when it's your tight end. Mm-hmm. And I think it's time for Mark Ingram to go away. They need to phase him out and go to
slow.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like he does much for me. Ingram doesn't do much.
And who's this Gus Edwards guy? Who is Gus Edwards?
I'll tell you who he is. He's starting for my fantasy team because everybody else is out with COVID. Let's go. Come on, Gus. All right, no?
The silence you hear is Lambeau Field.
All right. Hey, speaking of, you brought up the Hall of Fame earlier. I'm going to throw this at you guys because the list of 25 modern-era player semifinalists was released today. And there are 4 first-year ballot guys. I want to ask you a couple questions here. The first question is, out of the 4, are all 4 going to get in on the first ballot? The 4 are Peyton Manning, Kelvin Johnson, Charles Woodson, Jared Allen.
I think 3 out of the 4 should.
I don't think so. I don't think 4 will get in. 3 might be pushing it, simply because the format that the NFL uses I feel like guys wait a lot longer than they normally should.
Yeah,
Jim Marshall.
Well, yeah,
there's so many. I mean, I'll tell you one. Leroy Butler should be on there already.
Yeah, we're going to talk about him because he's on the list.
He's on the list. He's the only player from the '90s All-Decade team, offense or defense, that's not in yet.
Yeah.
Wow. That
is a stat. So
that's
think
wild.
See, I feel like Manning's a cinch, right?
Yep.
And do we think Woodson's a cinch? If we had to pick 2 out of the 4, we think it's those 2, right?
I think so.
I mean, I feel like it should be.
For me, the 3 that I was going to say, I think it should be Manning, Woodson, and Jared Allen.
Yeah, I don't know about Kelvin Johnson. I'm not 100% convinced he should be a first ballot, or even he feels like a guy that needs to sit for a while.
I don't. Here's the thing. I loved Calvin Johnson. I loved watching him play.
Me too.
Like I said, when I watched him play, he was the kind of guy that I thought he should be a Hall of Famer. But I don't think he had the resume of someone like Barry Sanders to get in with as short a career as he had. Right? Barry Sanders gets in as a guy who was an electrifying player who completely changed the position that he played in and did it for long enough that you could say Barry Sanders is talked about as one of those all-time guys. Do we really think that Calvin Johnson is an all-time wide receiver? Do we put him top 5?
No.
And the other issue with it too is, well, the 2 things I see. One, he never won anything.
Didn't win anything.
And as much as it's a team sport, that still matters in the Hall of Fame.
And I feel like you got to play more than 7 or 8 years. Like I do think at wide receiver you got to play a little longer.
And the second thing is I don't even know if he's the best wide receiver on the ballot. Like, I might lean towards Reggie Wayne for that.
Yeah. I was going to bring. So we agree on 2 at least. Jared Allen, I'm not sure. What about Jared Allen? I know Ryan says he's in. Zach, do you think Jared Allen?
I don't think he gets in on the first ballot.
I don't think he might not be first ballot, but he's a guy that needs to be in eventually.
Within 5 years, you think?
Personally, I would think so. Just because you look, he had eye-popping sack numbers. This is a guy that was considered the best defensive end in the league in 2 different spots, right? In 2 different teams. It's hard to do that in 2 different defensive systems, and he was able to do it. The one thing I think that's a weakness for him, and that was talked about in his playing career, and it'll be talked about as we run up to the voting for the Hall of Fame, is the guy couldn't stop the run. He was actually a major liability in the run defense. So I think that, you look at the really stalwart, real Hall of Fame defensive ends, those guys were good in all phases of the game. And Jared Allen was really like that. They would specifically run the ball at Jared Allen because he couldn't stop the run. So I think that that's a liability for him. I just think that his sack numbers, his acumen as a pass rusher is worthy of someone who could be considered for first ballot Hall of Fame status.
I think the other thing that's going to go against him is his alcohol issues when he was in KC.
Fair.
And again, like,
well, it's not fair, but yeah, I think it will come up. But
well, I think it does come up in that, like, right, he did get suspended for 4 games.
Yeah.
Right. So it is part of the football discussion. But so I think that we've talked about it, right? We've talked about it with baseball stuff too, right? It's part of the discussion when these committees are voting on this stuff. And so it could be hard for him to get on the first one.
All right, my second question would be, out of the guys who are returning to the ballot, and I'll read off these names, are there 2 or 3 that you think get in this year to go along with Manning and Woodson? Here are the guys that are back: Eric Allen, Willie Anderson, Rondé Barber, Cornelius Bennett, Tony Baselli, Leroy Butler, Alan Faneca, Rodney Harrison, Torrey Holt, John Lynch, Clay Matthews Jr., so not the other Clay Matthews, the dad Clay Matthews, Sam Mills, the late great, I think. Isn't he? I think he's passed, right? I thought he did. It's Richard Seymour, Steve Tasker, Fred Taylor, Zach Thomas, Hines Ward, Reggie Wayne, Patrick Willis, Darren Woodson, Bryant Young. Are there 2 or 3 guys that are in that returning list that you feel like they've been waiting long enough, they got to get in?
I think we already mentioned one. I'll let Zach take it.
Yeah, Leroy Butler.
Yeah, I think Leroy Butler's got to go in. He was a great safety. He, like we talked about, the all-decade team. He also invented the Lambeau leap, so bonus points there for me. The NFL rules state between 4 and 8 guys can go in each year. My ballot of the guys I would consider here: Tony Baselli, Leroy Butler.
Baselli never makes my list. I got to tell you, I think Tony Baselli's average. He didn't do it for me. Doesn't do it for me. Yep, I just felt like his career was too short. Didn't do anything significant.
Rodney Harrison, Clay Matthews.
Yeah, I like Rodney Harrison.
Reggie Wayne, and then Woodson and Manning. So that puts me at 7.
Okay. Ryan?
I think that for me, just personally, it would be really cool to see Manning and Wayne get in on the same ballot. I grew up on those guys.
They can induct each other.
Really they could. This is, for me, and I know every football fan goes through this, but for me, this is like seeing all the guys that I watched and really idolized as a kid, move into this phase of their post-career where they're getting into the Hall of Fame. And that's really cool, but it's also a reminder of how much older I am.
Shut up. Shut up.
And, it's cool. It's really cool. I would like to see Wayne. I think John Lynch is a guy that I think needs to get in.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there.
I think that he's a guy that was, when he played, he was a top 2 safety almost his whole career. He he didn't revolutionize the position, but he really embodied the position. And I really like John Lynch. I think Rodney Harrison's the same way. I really hope that Rodney Harrison gets in. And the last one is Alan Faneca. Alan Faneca, for my money, is one of the best offensive linemen to ever play the game. And I'd like to see him get in. I think he was one of the keystone pieces of the Cowher era offensive line into the Tomlin era when Tomlin first took the job. But I would love to see Alan Faneca get in.
Yeah, I like the Lynch call as well. I just think maybe for me right now, like I need some time. Like him, he's running a team now too, and so I feel like I get there 2 different jobs, but I don't know. I need some more space in there. I need some time after he's done that. I'm not ready to put him in yet. And you know, it's interesting when we look at some of these guys, because I also look at the list and I go, like, how is Fred Taylor a finalist?
Yeah, Fred Taylor sucks. Like, he has no business being on this list. Like, I know he accumulated a lot of yards, but he's called Fragile Fred for a reason.
Right.
Like, there's no way he should be a Hall of Famer.
Steve Tasker was a special teams guy.
And a good special teams guy, but no. I agree, he's not a Hall of Famer.
And so unless you like are gonna, open up and say, hey, we wanna say like Steve Tasker may be one of the best special team guys of all time. But does that qualify you for your Hall of Fame? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. And
agree.
The guy who I think gets the... Oh, go ahead, Zach. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. One of the things, and I know you and I are probably going to touch on this in a future baseball podcast, but I feel like the Baseball Hall of Fame kind of jumped the shark at some point, and like it became the Hall of really good.
Yeah, I agree.
And I would prefer not to have that.
Yeah, there's some, and I think there's a guy who's kind of guilty of that a little bit, and it's Eric Allen. I thought Eric Allen was one of the best corners in the league for a long time, but I wonder if he's got a little bit of like the Roberto Alomar thing, where maybe he hung on too long, and because of that, like the last 3 or 4 years of his career sort of derail where I thought he was a shutdown elite corner. He was great. Like, Eric Allen in his prime was fantastic. I don't know why he doesn't get more credit. I'm with you, though. I don't think Rondé Barber's a Hall of Famer.
No, that was my thought as soon as you said his name. I didn't think he was a Hall of Famer last year.
No, and I think Cornelius Bennett was a really good player for the Bills. Like, he was a really good player, but I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. Like, I just don't think so. And yeah, I could go either way on Richard Seymour. I think Seymour, I'd lean yes. Patrick Willis is like Kelvin Johnson to me. I think Patrick Willis is a great player. Like, he was awesome, but is the resume there, I think, for Patrick Willis? I don't know. I certainly love I think Manning and Woodson. I actually think you can make a case for Darren Woodson, too. Darren Woodson was really, really good. But I like Eric Allen. I think Leroy Butler, Rodney Harrison. I'm big on safeties, I think, this year. Or safeties and corners. I like Allen. I like Butler. I like Harrison. I like John Lynch. I think those guys got to get in. Those are the guys that I think of.
You had like that 10, 15-year stretch from like 95 to 2010 where you had these just elite safeties playing all over the league. They were just like these really, really good safeties. I don't know. It was just fun to watch. It's John Lynch was one of those guys. Charles Woodson was playing safety by the time that I really got to know Charles Woodson. It was there's just a really good stretch of safety play through that time of their careers.
All right.
Before we wrap this up, have either of you guys been to the Football Hall of Fame?
I need to go. No. It's on my list.
It's about the size of my kitchen. Like I am astounded. Like I went there. I'm just amazed at how small it was. And then the stadium next door, which obviously they play the Hall of Fame game in each year, but it's a high school stadium for the rest of the year, is massive.
That is true. I've noticed that it's a huge stadium. I gotta think they've built up that Hall of Fame a little bit, haven't they? Maybe they haven't.
It's probably been 10 years since I've been there.
Yeah,
but
we gotta go. We gotta. Maybe we'll bring the pod there one day. All right.
I was expecting like a sprawling metropolis, and it is small.
I'll tell you, taking the pods there probably the only way I'm going to get there, because there's no way I'm getting my wife to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio.
Yeah, you and I might, me and Zach might just have to find a weekend getaway and just go down there and do that, play a round of golf somewhere and go check that place out. I think that's going to have to happen. We'll bring the pod there. All right. We are we're gonna run late on this pod. Holy smoke, we're gonna go way behind, but that's okay. We're covering a lot of ground here today. Time for a quick segment of Take Your Pick. Zach had a tough one. Zach the Greek. We had to bring this up because he went 0-3 last week, so that cigar got pushed in, and he's not wearing his gambler's hat this weekend, but he's going to try to get it back. Ryan and I are scuffling too. It's not like we did any better. We were 1-2 in our picks last week. But Zach, here we go. A chance to redeem yourself. Let's start with the Thanksgiving Day game. Washington versus Dallas. Dallas is a 2.5-point favorite. This is a battle for first place, I think, in the division, or at least pretty close to it. Someone is going to get to 4 wins. Who's it going to be, and how does this go?
I'm on the Alex Smith train. I am not only taking Washington plus the 2.5 points, but I am taking Washington to win the division.
That would be incredible. The Washington professional football team at 6 wins wins the division, perhaps. Hey, Alex Smith,
Team chaos, huh?
Alex Smith might be the better answer, though, for them right now. Alex Smith's playing pretty well. I'll give him credit for that. Ryan?
Look, I think that the Cowboys put up a valiant effort against the Vikings. Obviously, they played a good game. I just think that they're going to come crashing back to earth this week. That Washington football team defense is it's pretty good, and it's better than most people have seen. The problem has been their offense most of the year. They've got a really good pass rush. I think they rank like 8th against the pass in the league right now. And let's face it, the Cowboys really haven't proven that they can run the ball outside of the Minnesota game. So I'm going to take the football team in this game. I don't know if I'll take them to win the division yet, but someone's got to win this game, and I don't think that the Cowboys are good enough to win it.
I'm going the other way. I'm taking Dallas and the points. I think they win and cover, and it's because I think Andy Dalton had that one crappy game, and then he went out with the concussion, but I actually think they're better with Andy Dalton. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to win 8, 9, 10 games here. I'm not going to get that carried away. But they're better than Andy Dalton's better than Alex Smith. I'm going to go with that until further notice. I'm going to take Dallas to win, take Dallas to cover the 2.5. All right, next game. It's Tennessee versus Indianapolis. Tennessee at Indianapolis. Indy coming off a big win. They're 3.5-point favorites against Tennessee. This Tennessee team, I don't know what to make of them. This line feels weird to me. It feels like a total stay away at 3.5. I don't know. Zach, what do you think?
I'm going with Tennessee. I think that I'm going to put my eggs in Derrick Henry's basket.
It's not a bad place to put it. So you're going to take the 3. They're covering. They're winning and covering potentially here.
Yep,
I like it. Tennessee, Ryan.
I think in this one, man, this is tough. Look, Indy played a great game against Green Bay. I just don't know how you pick against Tennessee right now. I got to take the Titans, and I'll take the points.
I think it's easy to bet against Tennessee because I don't think they're that good. Remember, they have lost to Cincinnati, and yes, they did win against Baltimore, but I'm not sure Baltimore is good right now. So I'm going to take Indianapolis to win this game and cover. I think they win this game. Phillip Rivers, like a lot of people like to rip Phillip Rivers, he's playing pretty well, like in spots. Like when he gets it going, he can still hurt you. And they're making some things happen. I think Frank Reich's doing a great job. Like I think when you start to look at these Coach of the Year candidates, I know we talked about this a little bit, Zach. I think Stefanski's moved to the top of the leaderboard with Kingsbury, but I think Frank Reich's got to be in the mix. Like they're doing some pretty yeoman's work right now with that situation. I like Indy to win that game and cover. Last game, KC against Tampa Bay. The Chiefs trying to put Tampa on a 2-game losing streak. Currently, KC is 3.5-point favorites on the road. Brian, what do you think?
This one I'm going to take Kansas City in the points, and I don't know that it's going to be a particularly close game.
Wow. A blowout.
I think Kansas City is starting to find themselves a little bit. And I just don't trust that Tampa's going to come out with a consistent effort the whole game. And when you're playing a team that is elite, as we've all said that we think that Kansas City is, I just don't know how you have a game where you can have any part of your game that's inconsistent and keep it close against an elite team.
You know, it really comes down to, can Tom throw the ball to someone besides his roommate? And I don't think he can. And so I will take Kansas City to cover.
My friends, the last time we rode off Tampa Bay, it was when Green Bay rolled into town, and I think we all thought Green Bay was going to roll them up, and Tampa rolled them up. I think Kansas City, as much as Kansas City's great, and I think Kansas City's elite, they're an amazing team, I felt like they could have just as easily lost that game against the Raiders. I feel like that defense was proof that they could be pushed around a little bit. I think Derek Carr played just a phenomenal game against Kansas City, and it was a fight for the Chiefs to win that game. I think Tampa can cover this game. And in fact, I'm going to take them to win and cover. 3.5, I think they're going to do that, and I think they're going to win this game. So they're definitely going to cover this. I think they're going to win this game too. Kansas City's in for a fight. I wouldn't be surprised if this comes down to a late field goal, something like that. I like Kansas City. I like Tampa Bay in this game. So I'm going against you guys. It's me versus you this week. I like it. All right, guys. Time to move to your favorite segment and mine, the power rankings, and then obviously the elimination chamber. Power rankings this week. Top two teams remain, I think, unchanged. Pittsburgh 1, Kansas City 1, and based on our theory of we're not going to get rid of the top team until they lose, Pittsburgh's got to stay where they got to stay. Are we in agreement there, guys?
Yep.
I really thought about flopping them this week, but I will stick with it.
All right, we are sticking with the top two. Pittsburgh, number 1, Kansas City, number 2. Number 3, we disagreed on this last week, so I'm guessing we might disagree on it again. Zach, where are we going? Number 3.
I am on the New Orleans Saints. They're the 1 seed in the NFC. They've shown me enough with the quarterback situation. They've won 7 in a row. They're my 3rd team.
Ryan.
Yeah, I had them at 5 last week because I wanted to see how they looked without Drew Brees. I think they passed that test. I'm going to go with the New Orleans Saints. I
had the New Orleans Saints last week. I'm going to stick with them again at the 3. I think it's the New Orleans Saints. They are the number 3 seed. I really am impressed with. I'm a little concerned about Kamara. I mean, I'm glad they have Latavius Murray, but Kamara's getting the touchdowns occasionally, but still not getting a lot of yards. You wonder if he's a little dinged up, but they're finding a way to win. Give them credit for that. Number 4, Ryan.
My number 4 team's the Buffalo Bills. I know that they were on a bye, but they're a good physical team that's been playing pretty well. They can consistently find ways to hang around good teams. They're playing pretty physically, and I think that the AFC right now is just a little bit tougher. So I'm going to give AFC teams the edge over teams that I think might be equal or in a head-to-head might prove that they're a little bit better than Buffalo. But right now, I think that I'm going to give the edge to the AFC team and go Buffalo.
What do you think, Zach?
After watching last night, I have the Rams at 4.
Wow.
Here's the deal. They are leading the best division in football.
Mm-hmm.
Goff has done a great job of spreading the ball around, right? You look at the catches last night. Their receiving core is really good. They have a semblance of a running game, and their losses are not. There's not a clunker of a loss, right? It's Bills, Niners, and Dolphins. Those teams are all, the Bills are good. The Niners and Dolphins are about 500. There's not a stinker in there. So, and they've got wins over teams like the Bucks, the Seahawks.
It was a different Niners team too, so it's not even fair to even call that the same Niners team that they're dealing with right now. I mean, that was a Garoppolo Niners team, I think.
Right. I mean, they went and beat the Seahawks and the Bucks back to back. I think that's pretty impressive.
That is pretty good. I will say that. And you know what? I was blown away. Very rarely are stats. I think stats sometimes can get overblown. Like Andy Reid being 19-3 off a bye. I don't know if that's a big stat or not. I mean, Dennis Green made a big deal out of that for years in Minnesota. But the stat that they showed last night on Sean McVay, that's legit. That he is now 32-0 if his team is leading at halftime. 32 and that's incredible. Like, he's never been out schemed in a second half when he gets a first half lead. I mean, that's a crazy stat.
Yeah, that's bananas. I didn't see that stat.
I was like, well, here's the announcer's curse is when I saw it. But that's an incredible statistic, and that makes me change my thought on McVay a little bit. But Ryan, I'm with you. I have Buffalo number 4. And I think it's because Miami lost last week to a bad Denver team. New England lost to a bad Houston team, which gave Buffalo even more of an edge in that division to win that out. I think it's very possible they're the 3 seed in the AFC when this thing's all said and done, especially when you look at the other teams that fell backwards, like Baltimore falling backwards. Tennessee had that rough stretch. I kind of like Buffalo. I think they're going to be a tough out in the playoffs. That's just where I'm at. I think they're number 4. All right, number five. Let's go, Zach. Number 5.
I am surprised that we've made it this long without really talking about this team, and we haven't really touched on them a ton.
I think you're about to snipe me.
The Cleveland Browns is where I'm going.
Yeah,
they're 7-3.
They are.
We did mention Stefanski as possible coach of the year.
He's done a great job.
I feel like they've solved some of the problems that they've had, and there's not a super impressive win on the docket yet. But when you look at their schedule, they could be cruising here for a while and end up with a really, really good record.
Ryan, did he snipe you?
Yeah, he sniped me. I was going to go Cleveland here because I'll tell you what, the team that I had originally thought might fit in the spot was Indianapolis, but the Browns beat Indianapolis, and they have the same record. They've won the same amount of the same. They have the same win streak going right now. I have a hard time going against them. I will say the red flag for me is how they fare against teams that are considered pretty good other than Indianapolis. They got blown out by the Steelers and the Ravens by nearly the same score. And that's a bit of a red flag to me. But, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and hopefully they can keep rolling the way that they are.
Yeah, they got to beat somebody. Listen, I'm not going to take anything away from Stefanski. I think they have rallied around him. He has got that thing figured out. He's circled the wagons there. Baker Mayfield's playing better. And they're doing some good things, but they haven't beaten anybody yet. And I can't put them in the top 5 until they do. If they knock off a Pittsburgh or something like that, I'll listen. Until then, they're a team that is beating bad teams, which is nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, that's exactly what you have to do. And they might make the playoffs, but to me, they smell like a playoff team that would play the 11 a.m. ESPN game on the Saturday. That's what that feels like right now. My fifth place team, I'm going to go with the Seattle Seahawks. I was impressed by the win over Arizona on Thursday night. I still think if you're asking me to decide between Jared Goff and Russell Wilson in a big spot, and this tends to be how I determine who's good. I mean, I understand that the Rams won a couple weeks ago. I totally understand that. I'll give you that. In a big spot, in one game, who do I bet on? Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson, Sean McVay, Jared Goff. I still feel like I'm leaning towards Russell Wilson. So I'm going to take Seattle at number 5. I think that's a good ranking, though. I like what you guys are going. I like where you're going. There's some teams that are starting to creep in there, and because this league is so crazy, I'm not surprised that these teams get thrown around a lot in these top 5s.
Yeah, and the reality is Seattle has got one tough game left. I feel like they play the Rams. Otherwise, they've got both the Giants, the Jets. They've got Washington, a beat up Niners, the Eagles. Like they should win those games.
Yeah, you feel like they're gonna finish this thing with 11 wins, 12 wins somehow, and they're gonna be a tough out in the playoffs. That's how this is gonna end. It's been they're an interesting team to watch. All right, let's get to the elimination. It's getting harder and harder because teams that you think are good kind of fall back, but teams that you want to get rid of, win a game here and there. Every week, again, on this podcast, we eliminate one team from the playoff race. So far this year, we have eliminated the New York Jets, the Carolina Panthers, the Denver Broncos, the Houston Texans, the Atlanta Falcons, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Minnesota Vikings, the New York Giants, which we might need to amend, which we can't, but the Cincinnati Bengals, which looks obvious now. They may not win another game the rest of the year after losing Burrow. And last week, the Los Angeles Chargers of Anaheim. Who goes this week? Nominees are open, gentlemen.
Have we eliminated the Broncos yet?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. The 49ers.
49ers are an interesting choice, yep. I can listen
Lions.
to that. Oh, the Lions were really bad last weekend. 20-0 to the Fighting PJ Walkers.
I think those are my 2. I'm
gonna throw one more in there.
Okay.
The New England Patriots.
Yeah, they were on my. They were the next team out of my mouth. My only concern there is the that middle section of the AFC, nobody jumps off the page to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the schedule, it's got a couple of tough teams, but it doesn't have any world beaters. And so I think I'm more apt to erase someone else, but they were definitely on my list of considerations.
And I don't think it's this week, but maybe next podcast we should seriously consider this. Maybe this podcast we should consider it the loser leaves town match, that Dallas-Washington game on Thursday. I think the loser of that game could probably get airlocked.
It's just hard to get rid of anybody in that division right now because, that's just, what a bucket of yuck. That is so bad. But you're right. We might have to think about that. I think Detroit's the team for me. I don't know, because to me, you lose 20-0 to a team that doesn't have their starting quarterback and their starting running back, and it's P.J. Walker, who was playing for the Houston Roughnecks like 5 months ago. You can't lose 20-0. You can't. Not in the third year of your operation. I understand they had a lot of injuries too, because that's the comeback that they'll make for Detroit. Is like, well, Galladay was out and DeAndre Swift was out, and I'm like, that's fine. But they had guys out too, which means you figure it out, right? You can't lose 20-0 in that game. You cannot.
Not to P.J. Walker.
It's not an excuse.
You can't lose 20-0 to P.J. Walker. And wasn't that a home game?
I don't know if it was home game or not. I don't know if it was it at home? I have to look that up. I'm not rote on Lions football, I must say.
You just can't lose that game.
You can't lose it. Even with the injuries, you have to feel like you can fight and scratch out a 16-13 game. Don't you feel that way?
Maybe this is me being bitter because
Panthers were home, I think. Panthers were home.
Okay. Maybe this is me just, being bitter because I started Detroit's defense in FanDuel last week. And it just ended up blowing up in my face because I thought, PJ Walker, this is going to be a cinch. Nope, Lions are going to lion, and then this happens. So I don't know, man. I don't know how anybody lives with themselves watching Lions football.
So Lions versus Texans, Thanksgiving morning. Is there any reason to watch that game?
If you have Matt Stafford on your, I was gonna say we could bet on it. No, we can't bet on it. We're in Minnesota. We can't bet on games here. But Stafford's, Matt Stafford maybe, although he was 18 for 33 for $178 in the last game. I kind of like T.J. Hawkinson. I don't know. This is the old landlord, Matt Patricia.
On Thanksgiving, will they?
I don't think that's a good idea.
Oh, I hope they do. Give me something good like that. Right at the start of the Cowboys game, just announce that you fired Matt Patricia. That's just tasty.
The old landlord, Matt Patricia, I think he might even win this game this week, but it's pretty clear they're not going anywhere. That team's not a team that's going to rattle off. They're going to win 6 games at the max, I feel like. And
yep.
You can, like I said, you can put a fresh coat of paint on the walls. You can change the furniture around, but the house has termites, and he's a bad landlord, and you got to fire him. At some point, he's going to lose his job because he's just not a very good coach. So, do we like the Lions here? Do we think the Lions are the team?
I'll get behind it.
Yep.
All right, Detroit, welcome. You're on your way to the elimination chamber this week. We'll see ya. That puts 2 teams now from the NFC North in there. The Bears, you're not far behind, boys. You better figure it out. All right. Anything we want to leave ourselves with before we head on out of here today?
I think we've hit all the football stuff. We got a little Thanksgiving in. I'm looking forward to sitting down at the table and eating, and just kind of checking out for a couple days here. I think the school year's been a long school year, and we're only in November. So
I'm with you there, brother. Oh my goodness. And Ryan, don't get too crazy over there. Don't party too hard.
It's just a raucous event here at the Nelson Kane household.
Gentlemen, you are the best. Thank you again for your time this week. Happy Thanksgiving to you guys. Happy Thanksgiving to the families. Thanks, everybody, for listening here on the pod. Once again, you can find us on Facebook at Tim Podcast. at facebook.com/Tim Podcast. You can also find us on Podbean. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And please go ahead and follow us, subscribe to us, tell a friend, and continue to support the show. We would greatly appreciate it. Happy Thanksgiving to you guys. Stay safe out there. Keep your head up, and we'll see you next time.